So welcome everyone. I am Cindy Rubin. I am owner and founder of In Touch Pediatrics and Lactation, and I am a breastfeeding medicine and general pediatrician doc outside of Chicago. And you are watching Keeping in Touch, my weekly series with all sorts of cool people and tips and tricks on all sorts of different subjects. And this week we have Dr. Emeka Obidi with us. And Dr. Obidi is a board certified pediatrician practicing in Maryland, where he owns a multi-provider family practice. He is also CEO of Newborn Prep Academy, where he runs an online newborn preparation course that helps new, expectant, and recently delivered moms understand how to care for their newborn baby and what to expect so they can feel confident, empowered, and ultimately enjoy their babies. Because that's what we want everybody to be able to do, right? Amidst all of the stress and craziness, to feel like they know a little bit and can enjoy. So welcome, Dr. Obidi. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. Rubin. I think you made a mistake though, because you said this show is a show where you have cool people on.
Come on. You gotta be kidding me. You're one of the coolest.
I don't know if I can classify myself as cool anymore.
You're pretty cool.
Oh, thank you so much.
Don't knock yourself.
It's a pleasure to come on.
Well, it's so nice to have you. So today we were going to talk about some pediatric pearls, and Dr. Obidi has been in practice for a long time and has children of his own who are how old now?
Oh boy, like many moons ago. So our oldest is a 19-year-old girl. So I have a daughter, who's 19 years old. And then her sister is 15 years old. And then they have a brother. We have a son who is 9 now. 9.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
So it's crazy.
Okay. So you've got the teens and almost the tweens, and hopefully you're still getting some snuggles from your son.
So far, yes. So I'm really trying to milk all of it as much as I can.
Yes.
Yeah. When he hears the garage door open, whenever I come home every day, he still runs out, and comes give me a hug. So I am enjoying all of it now, because I know that's going to end very soon.
Good. Yeah. That's the part of parenting that I still have not experienced, the teenage years, and I'm going to need a lot of help from people like you.
Which is fine.
Well, so we were going to talk about pediatric pearls because you have been in practice and have had your own personal experience for many years. And so I'm sure you have gleaned over the years 3 of the biggest bang for your buck pieces of knowledge or advice that you like to give new parents.
Yes.
So let's talk about number 1.
Let's talk about number 1. There's probably 1,001 things we could talk about in terms of
sure.
pearls, right? So many. But I thought I will step back, and if I was to do it all over again, right? And what I might do differently for that first baby, for our first daughter, I think it'll be some of these things I'm going to talk about. So number 1 really is setting an intention that you're going to rock taking care of this baby.
That's awesome.
So we're just going to start going out the gate, say, okay, we're going to do fine. Because I think there is a lot of anxiety and fear and concern around caring for a newborn, especially when it's your first one.
Yes.
And you're just wondering if you're going to get it right, if you're going to make mistakes, if you're going to know when there's something wrong with them. There's just so much to know, a lot you feel you don't know, right? And there is a lot you don't know. But I think setting an intention that we're going to do just fine. I mean, billions of these things have been born over the decades, over centuries, right?
Yes.
And somehow parents have made it through. We'll be fine. We'll figure it out. If there's stuff we don't know, we'll get that information, that knowledge. We'll find the right resources, but we're just going to be okay. And I think at the beginning, it really starts to help you approach caring. And just from what I've seen from moms also who've sort of had that sort of general stance at the beginning of their journey with the newborn, I think you're just able to better handle the difficulty that is inevitably going to ensue. Because, I mean, caring for a newborn is just difficult, period, right? It's wonderful. There are lots of beautiful moments, but it's also trying moments too, right? Because you're adapting to a
Absolutely.
new human being on your
Yes.
world that is totally dependent on you. And, with a feeding schedule that is almost like inhuman.
Yes, for parents.
Inhuman for the parents.
Yes.
And there's a lot to adjust
Yeah.
to. So I think number one is just setting that intention. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it's so impossible to know what it's going to feel like.
Yes.
And I think we all set expectations on what the experience is going to be like, what we are going to be like, what we're
Mhm.
going to do. And I think that's great advice to just know that it's going to be what it is. And we're going to do absolutely the best job we can. And it may not always be perfect, but we're going to figure it out as we go along and get help where we need it.
Mhm.
And that is our best. And that's what our kid needs from us.
Exactly. They just need you. They just need all of you fully present. And that in some ways kind of leads into the second pearl. I think
Mhm.
it's really setting an intention also at the very beginning to prioritize self-care
Yes.
and prioritize your important relationships, especially with your significant other, if there's one involved.
Yeah.
We're going to recognize ahead of time that if we don't set that intention and actually are intentional about creating that time, both for self-care and for each other, it's not going to happen, or it's going to happen sporadically, or it's going to happen ineffectively. It's just going to be that a lot of angst and just turbulence, for lack of a better word to use, in that initial period between significant others probably will be easier to navigate if ahead of time we had talked about the fact that we're going to prioritize ourselves and each other as we care for this new human that has
Yes.
entered our world.
I think that's a great piece of advice because, again, like you can't imagine what it's going to feel like.
Mhm.
You can go in kind of thinking that you're going to be able to continue to do that without a problem. But to know that that is going to be a really, really hard part, that like your partner, your other children, if you do
Yeah.
have other
Mhm.
children, something that you really have to have set time to nurture.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that. You don't have to feel
Yes.
guilty about
Yes,
doing that.
absolutely. That's why I think it's important to sort of think through this ahead of time. If you happen to be watching this pearls before the kid comes, and if not, you can start at any
It's not
time,
too
right?
late.
Because you really can't bring your full self to the picture if you're not caring for yourself. I think when we hear self-care, we oftentimes think that it is overindulgent, think about caring for oneself. Especially, I find that moms tend to think that way a lot, and certainly dads as well. But they feel like, now this child is my whole world. This is everything, right? And in some sense, that is true. But you can't really give your whole self to this baby, this child, if you're not caring for yourself. And caring for yourself doesn't have to be anything complicated, especially when you have a newborn in tow.
Right.
So it's really just saying, okay, I will take that 10-minute walk. I will have ask my partner to give me a back rub, foot massage. I will drink more water. I will ask a friend or family member or significant other to care for this baby for the next couple of hours so I can get extra sleep or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But it's thinking ahead of time what you need, or figuring out what you need in the moment and really doing it, because then you just bring, I think, a higher version of yourself to the picture if you're taking
Absolutely.
time to care for yourself. And then connecting with your loved one, with a significant other, that's important also. And it's not necessarily going to look like it was before the baby arrived, right? But at least you guys are taking time to say, okay, we're going to talk to each other. We're going to ask how we're doing. I'm going to maybe figure out some short form language of letting you know what I need, right?
Yeah.
Or that I don't even know what I need, just do something.
Right.
That we will spend time maybe rubbing each other's back. We'll spend some time kissing, So the level of intimacy may not be the same before the baby came, but you're still finding points of connection. I think that really helps because, again, it also helps fill your cup up so you're able to better give to your baby, helps to reduce some of the anxiety and just fatigue that comes around caring for a newborn. And talking about those expectations ahead of time too, so you don't feel like my significant other is demanding more than I can give, because we've
Right.
talked about what I am going to be able to give and what that's going to look like, right? So everyone's on the same page. I think it would be really helpful if parents can take that time to communicate ahead of time, or whatever point they're watching this, okay, let's time out, let's see, how do we do this, or how do we care for each other, how do we really connect with each other now that we have all of this going on with the newborn.
Right. Yeah. He suggested at some point having a subscription for a babysitter. It doesn't matter what you do. Like, you don't have to get a subscription to the theater. You're probably going to fall asleep anyway because you're exhausted.
Exactly.
But have a babysitter who is going to be there every Saturday night, but once a month on a Saturday. And then you can decide what you're going to do. And it can even be just actually going to Target with just your significant other and not your child. And it needs to be, but you have it scheduled. You have to do it.
You give yourself permission to do it.
Right.
Just going back to what you said earlier on, you don't feel guilty for doing it either.
Right.
Like, this is okay. We spend time. Someone once talked about a really nice idea of, instead of thinking of planning a dinner date, just do a coffee, not having to like dress up, or, there's just less preparation, throw on whatever you feel comfortable wearing, and going down to the Starbucks or local coffee shop and just having a beverage that's appropriate for you. And the baby can just be right there in their stroller or baby carrier. It's just a more relaxed atmosphere. There's less expectation at a coffee shop than at a nice dinner restaurant, for dinner with a baby. And this is again for when you don't have someone to care for the baby, that you can still just carry the baby and go to a coffee shop and you guys connect. But it's again just being intentional and thinking about these things and knowing that it's important.
Right. And another thing that I remember feeling guilty about, but doing, and I would tell myself to not feel guilty if I had to do it again, is that with my second baby, I still sent my first to daycare on the days that he usually went to daycare, which wasn't every day, but I felt guilty doing it. I was like, but I'm on maternity leave and I'm here, and I shouldn't be sending him away.
Now you'll gladly send him away. Can you guys give us more days for him to be there, please?
No, but it's okay to take advantage of having time with just your baby. You have plenty of time with both of them, like demanding your attention, but it's okay to send your child to daycare, because that also maintains some semblance of normalcy for the older sibling too, to continue with their usual routine. So you can justify it that way. But that just, again, goes into all of those self-care buckets.
Absolutely. Know what you need, and just giving yourself what you need, what the family needs. And this is going to be different for every family, right? And different for every person. But it's recognizing that there isn't one right way to do this, and that it doesn't have to look like what your best friend's doing, for their own family. This is what you need. And this is what your family needs. And to just do it without feeling guilty.
Right. And without feeling like you have to do everything perfectly.
Or justify to anyone.
Exactly.
Including the in-laws.
Exactly. Right. So maybe you should find a babysitter who is not a grandparent. Yes. So they don't have to know what's going on.
Right. Yes. So that'll be my second pearl.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right. So what's number three?
So number three, I thought I'll go with something practical. Your pediatrician probably would love if you did this. And I just feel like these things are our best friend as a pediatrician, because you can record things and you can take pictures of things that are easier for us to assess than trying to describe them.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh.
So, like anything at all that just looks abnormal, that you're worried about or concerned about, take a picture of it if you can take a picture, take a recording if you can take a recording, take notes if you can. As questions pop up, just put them down there so you remember. Oh, that poop looks weird. Take a picture of it. right? I think it's breathing funny or she's breathing funny. Just take a short recording because it's easier for us to just look at a recording and say, oh, that's fine, that's normal. Or we should probably look into this a little bit more than trying to describe what it was. Because oftentimes parents aren't very accurate with that description. What they saw.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I found it helpful over the years. If there's a rash, take a picture because oftentimes that rash has disappeared or changed by the time you have your appointment.
Yes.
And it's just helpful to say, this is what it looked like when you first started.
That is such a good idea. I mean, I often will tell patients when it's already happening. Like, let's say they do
Yeah.
come in with a rash and I say, hey, you're coming back tomorrow, but take a picture if it changes in the middle. But I haven't like really told patients to do that from the very beginning.
I do now.
Just
I
in
do now.
anticipation.
Just like use it.
Yes.
Every mom probably has one right next to her,
Right.
so you might as well use it.
Exactly. Such a good idea. Yeah. So I absolutely agree. And also just that no question is a stupid
Yes,
question, right?
very much
Like,
so.
I mean, this is our job. Those of us who went into pediatrics went into it because we want to answer those questions.
Exactly.
We know that you don't necessarily know because you haven't done it before. You don't have that training or whatever it is. There are no stupid questions.
There are absolutely none. And we also recognize that there's a lot of anxiety around caring for this newborn. Oftentimes, we recognize that why would you know if this breathing pattern is normal or not, right?
Right.
I mean, take periodic breathing, for instance. It's going to look abnormal for a lot of new parents initially. Oh my God, the breathing weird. This breathing isn't very regular. And so it's okay to ask those questions. It's okay to ask if this poop is normal or not. It's also those questions. Absolutely right. We welcome them.
Yeah, we were trained. We have seen so many that we know what's normal, what's abnormal. We've maybe seen one or two. And when we don't, we'll you'll only know if you ask.
Makes it easier to help get to an answer faster when you can add more context to it and more objective evidence. Just makes it easier.
Sure. Yeah. Such a good tip. Such a good tip. And sometimes I'll do the opposite, which is somebody's describing me something and I'll pull out a book and say, is this what it looked like? Or, you know, so that can be helpful too on the flip side.
Yes.
Usually it's like, no, that's nothing like what it
looks like. Or pull up an image on Google.
Right. Yeah. And you have to be careful about Google too, because sometimes you can Google like the name of some sort of a rash and all these pictures will come up. They're not all necessarily the picture of that rash. Not only could it be
really
just a random person put it up thinking it is, but sometimes it's literally not. It's like something similar, but the name of what you're looking for is somewhere in the text.
It's so true.
So, very, very good advice. Do you have anything that after you had a child coming back to practice and thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I have been telling parents to do such and such for years, and I had no idea that that was impossible or that it actually works out completely differently?
That's a crazy question for me to wrap my head around, only because, again, crazy is not the right word. I think just a difficult one to think through because I just feel like I don't even remember what life was like before a child. It's so long now. But I will say, thinking about it, I think it was more of my attitude towards a parent, especially after. So there are two incidences that happened with our first daughter that made me realize, okay, now I can see how things can happen. Actually, three. One, my daughter was really cranky this one period, and she was probably at 2 weeks old or something, or 3 weeks old. She was crying, nothing would settle her down. She was just so upset. And I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? What do you want? You know, try this, try that. You know, my wife was exhausted. She was resting. And there was like this flash of a second where I was like, almost like, oh, I wish I could just shake you to, what is it you want? And it was a quick thing that I'm like, oh my God, this is how frustrated parents can get when they have a newborn who is crying and they don't know what's wrong. I mean, I would never shake my child. I would never abuse them. But there was just this, I can't describe it. It was just almost like, wow, this is what it feels like to be really overwhelmed. And so really started to realize how important it was for me to hold space for a parent who's really frustrated and to really sit with them and help them process what's going on. Yes, it's really frustrating. I understand this is crazy, and help them through because they're frustrated, right? They don't know what to do. And then I had an incident. By the end of this, I'm going to sound like a terrible person. There's 3 incidences because at first I came in, I was still in residency. So it was still the crazy residence life, right? You had overnight shifts and had to give sign out in the morning. And at the end of the day, when you're home, you've probably been up for like 24 hours.
Right.
And I'd come home on one of those instances. My wife was exhausted. She was tired. So she was resting. I hadn't seen this little cute baby forever. I just had to hold her. Even though I was exhausted, I held her on a rocking chair. And the next thing I heard was her crying and her on the floor. I'm like, oh my God, I should know better. Like, how can I hold my newborn this exhausted? But again, just sort of really got me to understand what it looks like having a newborn.
Yes.
And luckily she was fine. She fell onto a surface that was carpeted and everything, and it was okay. We got her evaluated and turned out to be fine. And she's studying for her MCAT now. So
No serious head injury.
And the third was the first time our daughter had a fever.
Yes.
This is crazy because again, that was my 3rd year residency. And I came home and my wife said she's had a fever. She's just upset. She's irritable. I took her temperature, it was like 103. I took her vitals and her heart rate was like 190 or something. I was like, oh my God, she's gonna die. Her heart rate is 190. Let's go to the ER. Like my pediatrician had to see out the window. My years of physiology flew out the window. I didn't register that she has a fever. Her heart rate's going to be high. Like, she's okay. Calm down. Give her some Tylenol or something. I went rushing to the ER, flying through the door. My daughter's about to die. She has a fever.
Right.
But the resident just slapped up the top of my face saying, hey, listen, she's okay. But again, I think all those instances just let me know caring for a newborn is hard. And it really doesn't matter what your experience is. It's just hard. And we're human.
Right.
And so you give the best education possible. I think I just looked at parents differently after my first child. I just realized, you're human. This is just difficult. And you need to be an ally who's there, guiding them through that period, giving them advice and advice that's reasonable, right? And I can say, hey, listen, I know you're tired. I know you want to sleep with this baby next to you because it's easier, but this is what could happen. And I've been there. I've held my daughter and had her drop from me and going to believe that happened. So this can happen. You can really get that tired where you don't realize what's going on. And this made me, I think, better able to relate to a newborn, a new parent, just knowing that things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to throw in there just because people may be listening and thinking, well, what do I do when I'm that tired then? And my piece of advice that I give to people is whether or not you intend to co-sleep or fall asleep with your baby in a rocking chair or whatever it is, whether or not you intend to, at some point, it will probably happen either accidentally or out of desperation, or maybe purposely at some point. But what's important is to know how to create a space that is as safe as possible when that happens. So if like you just came home from work and you're exhausted, but you want to hold your baby or your baby needs to be held, put a gym mat down on the floor and just lay on the floor next to your baby. You can't fall off of anything. You don't have all the mattress and pillows and everything around you. And that's the safest way you can do it if you need to do it. I don't know why I never came up with that on my own. I can't even take credit for it, but
no, but you're absolutely right. You're able to give that advice from a place knowing that, I know how tired you can get. And you probably think you're not going to get that tired, but it can happen. And so how do you create the safest environment for sure? Yeah.
And again, to know that we as pediatricians, and I think this is what helps having been a parent yourself, is that not judging anything that you hear, because we are all just trying our best to make it. And sometimes we're going to do things in like the perfect way, and sometimes it's not going to be, and that's okay. And we just want to help you work through it and do things as best you can. But we don't always have the answers either. I mean, unfortunately, there's not a straightforward answer to everything. And doing what works best for you and your baby and your family is the right answer, really.
Yeah,
whatever that may
absolutely.
be.
I remember also my wife had said she was going to breastfeed exclusively. And of course, as a pediatrician, I was like, great, wonderful. We're going to breastfeed exclusively. And the first week was just so hard. And
Yes.
at one point, she's like, you know what, forget it. Go get that formula. I'm getting this baby formula tomorrow. And it was so funny because right after she said that, it was a beautiful feed. She latched well,
Yes.
everything worked out perfectly. I'm like, really? We had to threaten the baby to go get formula for her to now latch on properly.
Right,
I think
right.
it was something about her saying, okay, you know what? I'm just going to use formula. And I think she just was more relaxed. And so I
Yes.
think that just happened a little bit more easier because she wasn't as tensed up. But again, one of those things that just made me realize everyone has to do what's best for them in the situation. And like, you know, there are times where you may have to introduce formula and the world hasn't ended because you had to do that. And if you had intended not to, that you just sort of deal with what you have in the moment.
Yeah. Well, that is really, really important and valuable advice. And this has been so great. These are just really important pearls that we sometimes think, oh, the pearls are like, oh, what is, you know, how do you fix constipation? How do you fix, but it's parenting. A lot of this is just parenting advice and figuring it out as you move along, and really important things to think about. And
I think you're in a much better headspace to get all those other answers when you're just in a better frame of mind and just look differently.
Right.
Yes, I hope that was helpful for someone.
I'm sure it was. And on that note of self-care, so I always ask a couple of questions to all of my guests. And one is, what is your favorite thing to do in the area in which you live? So you're kind of in the outer Washington, D.C. suburbs.
Yes.
Right?
Well, more out Western Maryland. So lots of open space here. Honestly, I think just running by myself, going out for a run or a walk, I think I find very relaxing. Yeah.
Great. You're not the first person who has said that. I'm not a runner, but I wish I could be a runner. I probably should.
I probably should run more than I do. It's going to get warmer soon, so I'll do more running now. But but I think just spending time by myself, I think out in the open can be relaxing for me.
Yeah, nice. The other thing, so this is kind of could be a little bit like what we already talked about, but I like to ask, if you had a chance to go back and talk to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell them? And so not necessarily just in terms of parenting, but just in terms of life advice.
Oh boy, life advice. Oh, that's a tough one. I think I will tell myself to trust myself more. Yeah. Like, you know, Emeka, you know what you're doing, right? Don't doubt yourself. And I think I'll be a more confident 20-year-old. Hindsight being 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess to a certain extent, we all have to go through that to get to where we are.
Right?
But yeah, it would be nice to have that reassurance that it will turn out okay if I trust myself. And
give myself more credit.
Well, like I said, you're very cool. So you are a cool guest and you should give yourself that credit. No, you really are. It has been a pleasure. Every time I have talked to you, it has just, you have an amazing smile and you always put a smile on my face. And I can just imagine how reassuring you are as a pediatrician to your patients. And just so happy that our paths have crossed. So where, if I have talked to anybody in the Western Maryland area into having you as their pediatrician, how can they reach you?
Absolutely. So the practice is out in Western Maryland. It's Hagerstown, Maryland. So it's maybe an hour and a half from DC, about 20 minutes from Frederick, Maryland, if they're familiar where Frederick is. But so it's beautiful out here, Western Maryland, Hagerstown. Partners in Pediatrics and Family Health is a practice. We take care of both adults and kids. I'm a pediatrician and I have family providers who care for both adults and kids here. at the practice. And then I produce content online for newborn care, newbornprepacademy.com. And they can find all kinds of resources for newborns there.
Great. Wonderful. So go check it out, because really, really great content there. And I will put all of the links and everything in the notes on my YouTube channel where this will be stored. So thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Obidi. This has been a pleasure. And I am absolutely certain that this will help some people get through an easier beginning of their life with their new baby, because it's a tough time.
Thank you for having me on. It was such
Absolutely.
a pleasure talking to you again.
Yes. Well, you have a wonderful weekend. Everybody out there, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week on Keeping in Touch. Bye-bye.